It is Thursday, the 15th of September, and welcome to Daniel 11:33, the most exciting Bible study on YouTube. Now, if this is your first time, leave a comment and tell us where you're from. Now, the last study that we did covered the third trumpet, and I think that the evidence was pretty overwhelming proof that the third trumpet has already sounded. And by the way, the third trumpet was and is an event, which would mean the first and second trumpets would have already sounded. But what were those events? Stay tuned because we will get to that as soon as this. Revelation 8:8 takes us to the second trumpet. It describes the second trumpet. Let's read Revelation 8 and 8. It reads, Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. Remember the third trumpet lesson? We discussed how challenging it was for John, who in the first century had to interpret the visions of the 21st century future, where we are today. He did the best he could, of course, with the knowledge that he had. Now, it just takes a deeper understanding and deeper studying to get through the layers of interpretation. If you have not seen that lesson, there is a link for it. It explains the third trumpet event. That link, you know where the link is. Now, back to the great mountain. The great mountain burning with fire being thrown into the sea. Let's look at World War II. Remember World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki? If you remember the war, the United States was brought into the war because Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor. And then we responded with the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb, the great mountain burning with fire thrown into the sea. A third of the sea, a third of the sea became blood. Japan is a series of islands in the sea. It's a series of islands. Also, let us not forget the waters in the Bible also describes peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Okay, we learn that from scripture. Revelation 8 9. Revelation 8 9. Let's continue. All right. Revelation 8 9. It says, And a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The large bombs dropped in the ocean to sink the aircraft carriers that would have killed a wide range of fish, the marine dolphins, it would have killed everything. And then when they exploded, it would have ruptured everything on the ships, the oil tanks, everything. And all of that would have come to the surface. It would have exploded, it would have suffocated the animals, and it's just doing damage to anything and everything in the sea. You know, an example of that would be is what we seen in the Gulf of Mexico during the BP oil explosion in 2010. Remember that in 2010? If you're not familiar with that, look it up. Google that. The BP oil 2010 BP oil explosion. Okay, so that would be an example of what happened during World War II. Okay, remember World War II. It says, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died. Okay, and then it says a third of the ships were destroyed. A third of the ships were destroyed. Now, I did a Google search for ships that sank during World War II. And I found this article from answers.com. Now, this article right here. All right, so if you look at the numbers that man has recorded from World War II, 105,127 participated, and then 36,387 ships were destroyed. Now, just looking at those numbers, you can see a third. Now, please know that it is not exactly one third. I know that. But God does know the exact numbers he foretold. We we're not going to get it to the actual number because we can't account for every nation that was there, okay? But these numbers are close enough to put us right here in Revelation 8 8. A third of the ships, everything seems to be just lining up. And the fact that someone has recorded those numbers, that's just divine revelation. God, man, listen, these numbers were recorded by us, by mankind. And God has already told us that it was going to be a third of the ships being destroyed. And then a great mountain burning. One third of the sea becomes blood. One third of the sea creatures die, and a third of the ships destroyed. Okay, this is what was written by John, given the visions by God. Okay, so what are you thinking? Share your thoughts in the comments. Go ahead, share your thoughts in the comments, okay? Because I really would like to know what your thoughts are. Now, you can pause the lesson, because we'll be here when you return. Just pause and then continue when you get back, all right? Write your thoughts. I really want to know what you're thinking about what we're studying right here today, okay? Now, that's the second trumpet. Let us look at the first trumpet. Okay, so trumpets 3 and trumpets 2 have blown. So we know the first trumpet has to have blown as well because we covered 3. We just looked at number 2. So what is the first trumpet? Let us look at verse 7. Verse 7 says, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Remember, John was writing to us, 21st century believers. He was shown visions, and he wrote down describing what he had seen the best that he could. Now, consider this. World War I bombers dropping bombs from the sky, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. John had never seen an airplane, let alone a bomb that would be thrown to the earth from an airplane. Did you see that video? Look closely. The soldier in the rear seat is literally, he is literally throwing bombs to the earth. Hail and fire thrown to the earth. Just dropping them. Hail followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. Any living thing alive would become casualties of the war, leaving mingled blood everywhere. Continuing with verse 7, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Do you know what was used in World War I? Chemical warfare, biological weapons. Germany wanted to destroy everything as they moved through the battlefields and as they were retreating. Now, if you haven't heard of this before, Google it. It's called the scorched earth policy, and it was introduced during World War One. Now, the intent was to destroy the ecosystem, animals, cities, and residents as troops are withdrawing for more fortified positions or to simply retreat. They burn and destroy as they move out to cause hardship for the controlling nation. So, what exactly is scorched earth policy? A scorched earth policy is a military strategy that aims to destroy anything that might be useful to the enemy, any assets that could be used by the enemy. During the war, Germany had a scorched earth policy. It left no vegetation, no food, no infrastructures, and no resources that were readily available. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Bridges were destroyed, land was decimated. Today, the scorched earth policy is still being used. During my time of service, while participating in the Gulf War, the Iraqi forces they set fire to more than 600 Kuwaiti oil wells. And I know y'all remember that back in 90, 91, if you're old enough. If not, you can Google that too. Those fires, they burned for 10 months. The smoke rose like smoke of a great furnace. The smoke rose like smoke of a great furnace. The sun and the air was darkened because of the smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, Trumpets 1 and 2 has been revealed.